Hello, friends, family, and keepers of the faith, and welcome to Blog 25 or Episode 25, dated the 14th of August 2022. Now, this one's starting off a bit different because if you haven't noticed, I'm at night and light is a bit awkward for me with such only a Logitech type camera and not well lit room for doing blogs and things, but needs must. It is actually the 14th of August. It's 12:15 at night, and the reason I'm doing this is because I was intending to get up very early tomorrow morning, which I still am, but I got the dates wrong with a major broadcast that I thought was going to be happening with Panther, and that's not happening just yet, but we're all very excited about that broadcast. But I also had it intended to go and do a sunrise photograph with my camera. I've been looking at cameras just recently, and I've been thinking of upgrading to a mirrorless camera, a more modern camera than the one I use at the moment. But after looking at many YouTube videos, I've decided I might keep my DSLR, and I'm going to test it tomorrow with a filter and try and do a sunrise scene, and that means getting up at 5 in the morning, and therefore I did intend to do my blog at that time a little bit earlier, and the light would still be pretty bad. So I've decided I'll do this now because technically we're still in the correct date and time stream. So I've sort of not done much prep, so please do excuse me. I'll try and come across as normal as I can. But we start off then, as always, with the news. And usually it's my little bit about the war. Now, the only thing I've sort of seen this week about the war is about Ukraine's nuclear power stations. Apparently, they say they're very close to a Chernobyl event, and that's because of the Russian bombardment of shells and bombs. The constant shelling, as we know, has been on civilians and strategic targets. I'm not quite sure where we are in the war in regards to who's winning, who's losing, who's gaining territory, who's not. But I did worry a little bit about nuclear coming into it, as I've mentioned in previous blogs, and it seems very much that that threat has turned into a domestic, being as nuclear power stations are pretty much all around the world, Ukraine being no different, and therefore yes, there could be power stations that could just blow up. Not a nice thought, China syndrome situations. But there we go. Let's just hope the war ends soon, shall we? And then on Friday, was having a normal day, and then suddenly a news broadcast came up saying that Salman Rushdie had been stabbed. Now, that is a name that I hadn't heard of in donkey's years. In fact, I only remember sort of at the beginning of the 90s about this Satanic Rights book that had been written. Me being in my normal state of going out drinking, playing on computers, didn't really take too much notice in religious things that were going on, so didn't really quite understand it. But Salman Rushdie got stabbed on Friday, and apparently the medical situation with him is that he's on a ventilator and he may lose an eye. Nobody wants anything like this to happen to anybody, I'm pretty sure. I'm not going to get into the politics of it all. All I know is from the reports, he's been targeted lots of times through his career since that book was published. He gets death threats all the time. This particular one has become very, very close, and that's to the point that he's in hospital and on ventilator. So, you know, sad news, really. And then we've got some little bit of information about Petrol. Now, this is a funny one, really, because anybody knows about the petrol situation in the UK knows that we're pretty much triple taxed on it. But apparently the average price of fuel has dropped to £1.75 for petrol and £1.85 for diesel, and it's the first time in 2 months that there has been a drop this low. All good news. I haven't any idea on the cause or the reason. I know that in previous months Biden in the States has been trying to secure oil from other countries to help with the world fuel shortage. Now, world meaning we might be included. It could be that, could be all sorts of things. We get our fuel from percentage-wise from all different areas of the world. So there may be an area there where we've negotiated and got a cheaper price. Let's hope that the drop continues, because anything, even if it's 10 or 20 pence, will help us when you consider what's going to be happening to us over the next 6 months in regards to electricity, gas and water. As you know, we're in a heat wave at the moment. There are water shortages in this country, along with price hikes on all just our normal daily food. So any good news like that, very, very welcomed. And that ends the news. Now, normally I'll do the shout-outs, and I'm going to continue to do so. And then we're going to come to the questions. Now, when it gets to the questions, that's where you might see me looking down an awful lot, because I haven't had time to prep. I do apologise for that, and I hope the picture is perfectly okay through this. It's just I would never want me to miss a week where I don't do my blog, and I didn't want tomorrow to be too crowded with other people's broadcasts, plus the fact I didn't want it to be so late that it interfered with my mate Mainmeister. So, shout-outs. Well, I've just mentioned his name. Mainmeister called me this week and left a couple of questions, and I'll come to those in a moment. There is Steve's 8-Bit Gaming. Fantastic Steve. His stuff's coming out all the week. Absolutely great. Love him to bits. Highlander, Martroid, LFC Gamer, Jambon, Colin Ferguson, Roberts Gaming, Wee Bob Art, Panther UK, GTB Films, Milfy Swinbuckle, 20th Century Gaming, and one who's not too far from me, my mate Steve, but we call him Dotty. He commented this week, and thanks very much for doing that, Dotty mate, and I'll see you shortly. Get well soon. Now, a lot of these have asked questions. Now, the problem is the questions that have been coming out this week, and this is no different than other weeks either, really, but what's happened this week is they're all very similar. They've all been on a similar vein, and therefore I'm answering the questions several times, and I could combine them, but they're just subtly different. So I just thought to myself, hey, why prep at all? Why not just read out the bit of the question in the comment, answer, and then as you go down, if it links in with one that you've done before, I'm pretty sure people will understand. So that's what we're going to do. Now, they're in order of how they are in the comments section as I'm reading it off my phone. So the first one is Steve's 8-Bit Gaming, or as I like to call him, the Angel of Death, because the amount of times he dies in his games. No, we love you to bits, Steve. Absolutely fantastic. Just a little bit of news about Steve. Not only is he doing incredibly well, but he's thinking about changing the name of his channel. We've all been trying to help him there. It's always a difficult one when you're not happy with something, or something doesn't quite fit with what you're trying to do on YouTube. I've got no tips to give to people really on YouTube. I'm learning it all myself. But I can just imagine that you publish, I don't know, 70, 80 odd videos. You start it off with your name of your channel. And then later on, you tend to find that it's so restrictive that you want to be able to do something else, but it just doesn't fit. Totally feel for him. So please continue to look for Steve's 8-Bit Gaming. I'm pretty sure it's going to have gaming in the title somewhere, and we'll have Steve. So it's not going to be too hard to find. But let's go to his comment and his question, shall we? Okay, so, oh my God, he's asked 3. All right, this might be a long stream. 1, you are going to be locked in a solitary confinement for a year, but you can take 1 DVD box set with you, and it has to have over 30 discs. What do you pick and why? That's a difficult one, Steve, because first of all, even a season of a box set that I might only have 4 discs in it. To then have 30, you know, you're looking at seasons that go, you know, into the seasons 8, 9, 10, 11, and I don't have too many of those. Even Star Trek The Next Generation went season 1 to 7, Voyager 1 to 7, you know, you get what I mean. And even the old Star Treks were just 3 years, and those generally only have 4 or 5 discs in them. But the clue here is the solitary confinement, and as much as those adventure type stories, you know, that are set in space, and I can mention tons that I'd love to have: Space 1999, UFO, and I could even mention crime stuff, even crime with funny stuff in, like Monk and Columbo and all of those sort of things. I don't think they'd still meet the 30. So what am I going to do? I'm going to have to choose a comedy, I think, and I'm going to choose, now it could be Frasier or Cheers, but I'm going to go with Frasier. He doesn't ask, I don't think, why. Oh, he does. Yeah, he's asked why. Frasier. Okay. Frasier's one of those shows that I truly, truly appreciated when I was watching it, because it comes across as highbrow, but as actually very much slapstick. It's not like Faulty Towers or anything like that. What I'm trying to get at is, I grew up on a character in Cheers that I saw growing even more, and Cheers came to an end. They then decided that one character that seemed to have quite a lot of jokes and was interesting needed to go back home, and we were then going to meet his family and friends in a different situation. So we were going to meet his brother, his dad, you know, his new job surroundings, which meant that he had new job people that we're going to meet every day. You know, like I say, a lot of things that were added to it, and then there were all the situations. So what his love life was going to be like, what his career was going to be like, the problems that you'd have with your father moving back in when you're very snobbish, what, you know, the conflicts that you have with siblings. You know, I have my own conflict with my sister. What's it going to be like for Frasier and his younger brother? It excited me. I watched the first season, really, really liked it. From then on, I was watching it. I saw the characters develop, and then the final scene, I think it was in season 11, which ended in a, could this be rejuvenated later on? So all in all, I really enjoyed Frasier. But enough of that. Your second question, do I choose Morecambe and Wise or the 2 Ronnies? Can't choose them. Straight away I can tell you now, that would be pretty impossible for me to do so. Many people will know that Morecambe and Wise is like a stay point for people at Christmas, and I remember their shows as well without just looking at the Christmas specials. And when it comes to the 2 Ronnies, you've got one of my favourite comedians, one that I respect more than many other comedians, and that's Ronnie Barker, a wordsmith. And most people that know me know that anything to do with narrative or a play on words and I'm in love with it, and I want a copy of it. He did the Four Candles sketch, Mastermind sketch, Pronunciation sketch. They did all of the sketches together with Ronnie Corbett on things like The Word That Turned and The Phantom Raspberry Blower. You know, so many highlights, and the two just gelled, and it's a little bit like Morecambe and Wise. They just gelled. They've been together through vaudeville, you know, through the war together, until they reached, a level where on TV they just shined. And it took many years for them to do that. They were shocking at the very beginning. Apparently, there's a newspaper article saying this is the article that shows the death of Morecambe and Wise. You know, I can't quite remember what the wording was, but it was pretty much a death knell. And so sad that we miss them all. They're all of those, Morecambe and Wise, Ronnie Barker, Ronnie Corbett, all now passed away. And a big part of my childhood's gone with them. Okay, so the third one. Have you ever rage quit a game and thrown a controller or a mouse? If so, what game? And he's asked me to take care. Thanks very much, Steve. You appreciated with all the problems that I've had in the past. Rage quit a game. I don't think I ever have. I've told stories about Rise of the Robots where I was just disgusted by the game. Mainmeister's mentioned, you know, that he was disgusted with Street Fighter. Whether he threw the joystick to the side because he was disgusted with it, I doubt it. It's one of those things where I'll try and see the good in anything, and if I don't see the good in anything, I was probably so young and so brash that I just walked away from it, came back, loaded it up again just to see if it was as bad as I thought it was, and then just put it to one side and said, don't have to play that again. There have always been a death in a game where you've gone, oh, that's cheap, that's not fair, I got this far. And there have been times where that could have happened and it took you 25 minutes to get to that point, and you're thinking, that's a waste of 25 minutes. Jesus Christ's sake, you know, we've had those moments. I don't think I've busted a joystick about it though. So I hope that answers your question, Steve. You you great person, you. And we'll move on to the next one. Okay, so we've got Highlander. Highlander was such a nice bloke as well. He always comments. Doesn't always ask a question, so let's see whether he's asked a question. Has any computer game ever evoked a strong emotion when playing it? It might be the narrative of the story, the soundtrack, the characters, etc. Oh my God. I don't think there has been Highlander, but I know for a fact that in films I've become very close, because what happens is in a film, in a short space of time, you can still get emotional about a character and their situation, and it could mirror something that's happened in your own life, and then it brings back something in front of your eyes which was always in the past, in the back of your brain, and it makes you realize, I know exactly what that person's going through, and you can then have an emotional reaction to it. I don't think that's happened in a game, but if it has, it wouldn't be the 8-bit era, and it probably wouldn't be the 16-bit era, because the characters didn't look realistic enough. You knew it was a story. But saying that though, you ask any kid whether they've cried, especially my sister, in a cartoon like Watership Down, and she'll turn around and say, yeah, I bloody well did. And even as a child, you might cry over The Amazing Mr. Blunden or The Railway Children, or, you know, lots and lots of things. And that must be the combination of not only the story, but it must be the emotion in the story plus the music. I always find music is key. So I can't think of a game, but it's bound sure to be in the console era, probably closer to the Xbox 360 PS3, PS4, Xbox X, Xbox One, PS5 era. And it's bound sure to be one of those titles like Dying Light or another one, or I can't remember all the titles, you see. So it's bound sure to be one with a deep narrative story where you get so close to the character. Like I say, Mainmeister mentioned one where there's a follow-up to it that he's not playing at the moment, but I can't remember the title of it. So apologies that I didn't come up with a particularly good title for you, but at least yeah, I'm pretty sure I'd probably come close to that. So another question this time, LFC Gamer. Okay, let's have a little read and see what he says. For the next video, what is your favourite UK and US sitcom of all time? Well, I've mentioned pretty much a couple already, but I'm going to go with, when it comes to the UK, you can see it in my name, Only Fools and Horses. I watched that to death when it was out, when it came out on DVD. I bought them when they're repeated on UK Gold or whatever. I'm watching them again. I've bought the scripts. I've watched the documentaries of how it was made, and of course, there have been some spin-offs, Green Grass and what was it, Rock and Chips, I think it was called. They don't come anywhere close to Only Fools and Horses, though. It's just that writing of humour with pathos that can turn you from a giggling wreck to a, oh my god, isn't that awful emotion, like someone dying or something. That's just fantastic writing, and of course it had a killer cast. You wouldn't have thought it, back when it first came out. In fact, in its first season it was going to be cancelled, but it lived on, and thank God it did. And then I've already mentioned my favourite probably sitcom in the US, and that would be Frasier. Nothing really to add about Frasier. It's just got a little bit of everything in it. It's that writing again. It's that knowing the characters, developing those characters, getting an emotional connection to those characters, and then following them through seasons and seasons of episodes. Thank you very much for your question. I really can't answer anything else, and I hope that answered it for you. Then we've got Wee Bob. Okay, yep, he's got a question. Let's see if I can find it quickly. Question for next week. Okay, I was speaking to one of my kids today about the Lord of the Rings Spectrum game, which had the full Fellowship of the Ring book in alongside the cassette with the actual adventure game. I know you seem to have a lot of modern day type big box collection things, but do you remember anything like this type of collectible when you were just a young lad? Cheers, and I hope you have a great week. Thank you so much, Wee Bob. I've actually brought this up before because I used to buy big box stuff, and when they were around, and even during the 8-bit era there were big box things. Most of my big box stuff though tended to be from a bigger publisher like Infocom, and one of their adventure games was Leather Goddesses of Phobos. They also did the Hitchhiker's Guide and a number of other adventures in the Zork series, and they always used to put these collectibles in. Now, the Leather Goddesses of Phobos had a 3D comic in it, and it also had a scratch and sniff card. You can guess what the scratch and sniff is. It's a text adventure. At a certain point you'll enter a room and it will say scratch card number 2. When you scratch it, it smells like an old fart or from eggs or something. An interesting idea to add something to an adventure. What those cards now, whether they work or not 40 years on, which I think the smells are gone, thank God, or they all smell like rotten eggs, who knows. But Panther even brought up that he had a big box game. I think he said it was like an operation type game, and it came with a surgical mask or surgical apron with a load of things. Though if you look around, there were a number of boxes that had interesting things inside them. But I answered your question by saying the first one that I can remember was I bought the Hobbit on disc, and the Hobbit on disc I think had the book, and it also had the enhanced graphics set because it was on disc. So I didn't have it on tape. I have seen mostly versions on tape, and the graphics do look substantially less. It was a great adventure, but it wasn't without its faults. There was spelling mistakes and all sorts, but I can't speak about spelling mistakes and grammar and so forth. Mine is atrocious, and autocorrect doesn't help either, especially when I'm trying to type fast. So anybody who knows me in Discord will know that. And I do apologise right now for it, because if I was on a keyboard or something it would be so much better, but most of the time I'm answering you guys on a phone that autocorrects. Oh, awful. Okay, hope that answers that wee Bob. Okay, so where are we now? We're up to Jambon. Told you this would be long. Okay, does Jambon ask a question? He has a question for me, yes. What were some of your most watched DVD box sets? And more generally, what were your early experiences of the DVD medium? Were you an early adopter? Question mark. Please ignore if you've been asked this before. Well, it's very nice for you to say please ignore it, but I won't. I have answered whether I was an early adopter because I had Laserdiscs. And Laserdiscs were still live and something to get when DVD medium was coming out. But I'd long had a 32-inch or larger Philips widescreen TV. I'd long had satellite and was watching widescreen films. When the DVD medium came out, the only thing that paused me from getting it from day one was the fact that I knew that there was going to be multi-region. Multi-region is the death of a number of systems. And during the market of what was coming out, the problem that you've got is that you can't get stuff from America and play it. And stuff that was coming out on cinema was then coming out on DVD in the States. So you'd want it. Of course, it would kill the cinema industry if you were to get that on tape and sell it at markets. So, of course, region protection was something that they needed to protect their investment. Regardless of that, we all found out that there were codes you could put into your players. There were mods that you could put inside your players. But they were an expensive item back then. We're talking £400 or £500 for a DVD player. Because they all had trick features, and from that point of view, taking it to bits to put a mod chip that probably cost about £30 and having someone do it for 20 quid in your player that you just spent 500 quid on, a lot of people were a bit scary about doing that. So a couple of years later, and of course we were finding soft ways of doing it. You know, let's not make this a hard topic, but just think about it like this. You're a manufacturer. The manufacturer of DVD players, there's only several of them around the world. Are you seriously going to develop a chip for all the regions? No. You're going to make a chip that basically is set electronically to a region, and it will lock out all the others and then ship it to that country. So that means that all you've got to do is unlock those other regions. That has not changed. Now, if you were to do it the other way, it would be harry-carry in regards to your manufacturing process. So whenever you hear the word region, just know there's going to be a way around it. So it never scared me. I hope that answers your question. The very first multi-region disc I bought, I believe, was The Matrix. And that had security protection on it as well. That was a right pig to get past. In fact, if you hooked it up to the wrong TV, you couldn't play it, even if you had the legitimate stuff and you weren't trying to pirate it. So just be warned, security protection tries to be clever and basically fools itself. Okay, we now move on to Panther. The rinky-dink Panther. Wow, you know, big head. Well, I call him rinky-dink because of the Pink Panther. It's all just a running joke with him. We get on like a house on fire. He's one of my best mates. I talk to him an awful lot. It's just he has to one up on me all the time, and he always wins. So of course I have to come back with some rapport, and I'm not as quick-witted as him. I'll put my hands up to that. So I've just noticed, you know, that when I was watching some of his videos and the ones where he's on camera, that he just looks very pale. You know, so then I thought, well, pale is Pink Panther, rinky dink, you know. But I mean, he does look pale. I mean, he looks like a blood donor who couldn't say no. You know, it could be a vampire. But anyway, we won't start judging him for, you know, sucking blood and stuff, because, you know. So, has he got any questions for me? Bet you he has, the bastard. I mean, the lovely person that he is. So his first one is, who would be your choice of British actor to play the Doctor? While we're doing fantasy casting, should they ever remake Blake 7, who would make a perfect Blake and Avon? And Foodgate. Foodgate. See where I'm coming from, boys and girls? Best pint of ale beer. Cheers, me old mucker. Yeah, thanks for the Foodgate question, Panther. Right, going back to the beginning, who would be your choice of British actor? Well, see, Panther's put this in because he knows I'm a big fan of Doctor Who. He knows that I followed it all the way from my early memory, which is John Pertwee turning into Tom Baker. So that's Planet of the Spiders. That's 1973-74, right? But I've watched them all, and even now I still swear Patrick Troughton is probably the best Doctor who's ever played that character. Just purely on the basis that Doctor Who always looked good in black and white anyway, I always thought. And that character actor with the lines on his face and the way that he would turn goofy but also be that genius. You know he's just hiding it. You know, it's almost like Columbo and the not, you know, making everybody believe he hasn't worked out what the crime is yet, but you know full well he's already done it. So let's see, Doctor Who. I've got two. I can't choose between them. James McAvoy and Tim Roth. Now, the Tim Roth one is the hardest one for me to explain because I just like the actor. Ever since I've seen him in Reservoir Dogs, in the TV series Tin Star, I think it's called, and lots of other films. I mean, he's been in the remakes of the Hulk. He's been, you know, it's just a class character. I've just always thought he's got that manic eye in it, you know, where you could almost class him as psychotic, but you know that he's just holding it all in because he's a genius. That would be good. James McAvoy's obvious. I think actually his name's been brought up in many conversations about could we ever get an AAA star actor playing the Doctor, who would it be? And I think his name has cropped up. But if you've ever seen him in X-Men, and if you've ever seen him in other films where he's played actually, you know, psychotic characters, you know he's got that, he's very relaxed, he looks wise, and you know he can handle the speech with all of the gobbledygook, you know, like reversing the polarity of the neutron field, you know he can handle it. So I think that answers that. Now the next one's harder. It's Blake 7. An old favourite of mine. 4 seasons, you know, ended rather abruptly for all of them. Now, I think Avon's probably the easiest one for me to talk about, because when you think of Avon and the character that played Avon, it's not a bulky character. It's a character that you think, does he look like he's a computer genius? Does he look like he's very forceful, action orientated if he needs to be? Does he look like the sort of person that would pull the trigger on an innocent rabbit? Yeah. So I think two people that could possibly do that would be someone like David Tennant or a very young Gary Oldman. Gary Oldman would be absolutely perfect, I think, as Avon. But Blake's the harder one, because Blake was only in it for the first couple of seasons and then ended up in the last, in the last couple of episodes of the last season. He came across as sort of like a rugby player, that stocky rugby player type, broad-shouldered but not fat. Looked like he had authority in his voice. Do you know what I mean? So I'd have difficulty thinking about that one, but maybe if I put in at the moment Henry Carvel, who's more American but is a British actor and classed as a British actor. And I might have to come back to that one on your own, Panther, but I think I've got my Avon, and I hope you see the reasons why on that one. And then best pint of beer or ale. Cheers, me old mucker. Anybody that knows me actually knows that I'm a whiskey drinker. When I used to go into town, yes, I did have the odd pint, but when it came to the end of the evening, I'd be having a malt whiskey. It would be in the vein of something like a Dunwinnie or a Lefroy. I just didn't get on with the bells and grouses of this world unless you stuck something in it, even to the point of just putting pure orange in it. So I think if it was lager, it'd probably be Stella or Kronenberg. If it was cider, it'd be Scrumpy Jack or Thatcher's Gold or Magners. Not very big on dry. It'd be more medium sweet cider. Strongbow's all right though. Thank you very much, Panther. You lovely, great person, you. And we're so looking forward to your next publication coming out shortly. I'm sure you've got one today, but I'm pretty sure in the next 2 weeks we're going to be overjoyed at something that we've all been waiting for. I'll keep everybody peeled here as I know more. I mean, I do know when it's coming out, but I'm not going to say anything. We already said that, didn't we, Panther? Anyway, Colin Ferguson. Now, has he asked me a question? See how I'm having to go back and forth? Yes, he has. Okay, Colin Ferguson. If you had only one channel to watch on TV, would you choose YouTube over all others? I hardly watch mainstream TV now. Just repeats of garbage and woke fest. All the best. You're dead right. I watch now more YouTube. In fact, it's scary. If you look at your own account and go to watch history, you'll see a bar graph, and mine goes up and up and up. There are very rare days where it's below a certain threshold, because to be quite honest, you're quite right, there's very little to watch. In fact, I'd rather watch my 4K Blu-rays or watch something on Netflix than I would watching something on BBC One or not. Saying that though, when it comes to repeats, I'll watch Frasier on Channel 4. There'll be something on E4 that I'll want to watch. In fact, it's funny how we measure success, because at Christmas and the Radio Times and the TV Times comes out, it's always the same stuff that they have every year, with very new stuff, even though you spent a load of money on the TV license and so forth. And on top of that, it's always the battle between BBC One and ITV, and yet they're just bringing out repeat woke crap. So we've got to look at different rating systems. Like I said, with games and emulation and how we rate that, we need to do a different thing on numbering systems for audience appreciation. I hope that's answered your question, Colin. Okay, who we got next? GTB Films. Yes. We sort of have chatted a little bit more just recently. Started to watch a few of my blogs and a few of the reviews that I've done. He was very happy with my reminiscing about my PC work, and he wanted to know whether I used to play something called Multiuser Dungeon. Now, all of a sudden Ponder's ears are probably pricked up, because anybody of a certain age will remember that when networks were young, one of the earliest things that you'd do was something called Multiuser Dungeon. But I have to say that 16 years of my life with Lloyd's Bank And even though I was on the service, the IT desk for a good 7 years, 8 years of that 16 years at Lloyd's, I never once had a good enough friendship for us to be able to play network anything. It was totally locked down. It had a kicks and pod system. Anybody who works in banking will know that one's a credit information system, the other one is a payment system, kicks and pod. Green screen, working on dumb terminals or XTs. So basically, what you could do on them was restricted. So saying that, I have to then go to a little bit later on when I was probably working for iSoft, working on doctor surgery stuff. And I do believe, yes, one week I was working at nights. So I was working at 10 till probably 5 in the morning. So 10 at night, 5 in the morning, somewhere around there. And we managed to get Quake or something running. That was fun. But it was a rare occurrence. And I didn't set it up. So I put my hands up and say, well, me. Even though I've just told the world that we did it. Try and catch me. So did I play anything on a network when I was working at the primary, the secondary school or college as they call it? And like I said, they had the Apple IIs and the Commodore PETs. I think there was an adventure game that you could actually hook up and have a central database that you connected to. I just can't remember what the game would be. It would have been a text adventure. It wouldn't be Multiuser Dungeon either. That's far more complex. But we did, I do believe we did have a Unix network. So I'm going to say yes, I did, because it's more likely that I did than I didn't. And I hope that answers your question, GTB. Thank you so much for your question, matey. Cheered me up no end just thinking back then about, well, did I or didn't I? I really do need to sort of look back at some of this stuff. And then we've got Milfy Swimbuckle. Look out for a complex one here. Okay. One actor crossover question. Here we go. Now notice that we've already had a couple of actor questions already. See how these are similar. Which actor, actress from outside Britain could take a part in a classic British show and play a classic role in said show and make a reasonable job of it, ignoring accents and language barriers, and vice versa with a British actor and actress in a classic foreign show? Okay, I think I've got that. And I did have a think about this. I'm going to say, and I've mentioned these names already, that although it's sacrilege to think of anybody playing Basil Fawlty other than playing anybody in Fawlty Towers is sacrilege, really. But if it was to be remade, and I think it did try to be remade, but it was total abortionate effort. I think Kelsey Grammer, who plays Frasier, would probably do quite well. John Cleese is fantastic. Don't get me wrong, and this is where I'm saying I'm treading on water here by saying, how could you even mention Kelsey Grammer in the same breath? Well, of course you can, because if you think about it, Frasier is a hobnob, snobby, condescending person who thinks he's higher than anybody else. Well, what's Basil Fawlty? So you need a character like that. You don't need to worry about build and stature, whether somebody is tall or short or whatever, but he's got the stature as well. And remember that accents don't come into it. Yeah, I'm going to stick with that. Kelsey Grammer, in a Fawlty Towers. Now, when it comes to an American show, then we'll stick with what we've been talking about the last couple of weeks, Columbo. I'm going to go with Anthony Hopkins. And why not? Anthony Hopkins, what an actor. He's the sort of person that you don't need to worry about accents and so forth. He could string someone along and probably know exactly who did the murder and keep it away from everybody. Everybody's second guessing, and he knows already who it is. He's got that face. Do you know what I mean? That where you could actually almost see him saying, "Oh, and just one more thing." You know, I can see him doing it now, you know, possibly not with a Mac or a coat on, you know, like Columbo had, but yeah, I could see that happening. And I believe that's the end of the questions. I'll just check. Yep. So, just to end there then, it was Mainmeister that talked about in the waffle when he was trying to do these questions. And he mentioned a number of shows that I watch even now. Man About the House, George and Mildred. He mentioned a couple of those. Every single one of those shows has been a British hit that never did very well in the States, apart from a small, very insignificant amount of shows. So Man About the House started off in the UK. It went over to America as Three's Company. George and Mildred started off over in the UK. It turned into The Ropers over in the States, and a follow-up to Three's Company. Till Death Us Do Part, which was a show in the 60s with Alf Garnett, went across to the States as All in the Family, a very successful show with a bigot type character in it. Steptoe and Son, again, a show in the 60s that started off as a playhouse show that turned into a series that just took over the whole of England as one of the highest rated comedies going, was Sanford and Son in the States. But there is something that I have to say about all of those. Every single one of those American shows I can't watch. I've tried, I've sat down, the humour obviously fits the American audience, but I'm so ingrained with Man About the House, George and Mildred, Till Death Us Do Part, Steptoe and Son, and watched them over and over again. I just can't see these other people doing these characters, and yet I know they're exactly the same. I don't know what you guys thinking of when I mentioned that, but I hope maybe you are similar to me, but you'll have to let me know in your comments. So what have I been doing then this week? We're getting close to the end. So I've done a couple of reviews. I did a Paradox Vector, which was a first-person shooter in vector graphics. I did Arcadia, reminiscing about that old 1982-83 game that appeared on the Spectrum. It was a remake, and to be quite honest, wasn't very good. One of the worst. In fact, I went along with what Mainmeister was saying how can you reword a title to see whether more people would watch it, and I put possibly the worst remake I've ever played ever in my life so far. Didn't make a blind bit of difference much, really. I didn't have it quite that length, but it wasn't far from it. And I played an hour on a live stream on a game called Star Valor. Now, that I learnt an awful lot on. I had to have another PC on to see the chat. I had to play it on Steam without seeing OBS going. We learnt it together. I loaded it literally 2 minutes before I started the stream. Everybody had an input, so I asked people, where should I put my skill points? Where should I go? Should I go up? Should I go down? Should I go left? Should I destroy this? Should I tackle the next mission? Had some great fun, and it's had quite a good showing. Nothing's altered in regards to subscriptions, but that's not the point. It was the point that it was fun to do, and it got everybody involved. And the only thing that I had missing from it really was, if this was in a real world, I'd have a headset listening to you guys. I'd hear your voices rather than me having to look at a machine and just look at what you typed. And of course, remember, there is always a delay. So not the best idea, but we've done chapter 1, which is the tutorial, and I'm going to attempt to do a chapter 2 possibly this week if people liked it. Most people have commented and said, yes, that was a good evening, and the screen looked good, the sound was okay, everything could be heard, and it wasn't boring. That's the thing that I worry about. Was it boring? Okay, so Haven't watched much this week, but Lock and Key is back. That's a TV series on, I believe, Netflix. I got to about 2 or 3 episodes of season 2. Season 1 was great. It's just that something got in the way for season 2. Probably starting my new job, probably it was. So that's took up quite a bit of my time on why I didn't watch Lock and Key. So I might try and spend some time with that. Car insurance. Well, what bastard. I mean, what lovely people the car insurance people are. As you could probably guess, I wasn't happy with my car insurance quote. I went to go compare, saw the same company that I'm currently insured with doing it cheaper if I was to cancel my policy and restart my policy with them. So I phoned them up, told them that. They dropped the price to the same thing as what they saw in the on the Go Compare site, and my renewal will therefore start, and it will be about £15 more expensive than I'm paying now, which I'm happy to do because I do know things go up, right? And £15 is within the tolerance figure. I am just not doing the 50 or 60 quid, which is what they were going to do. Robbing people. We all know about the heat wave. I've kept within the restrictions of what I can do in my garden with water. There is a hosepipe ban on now, so I can't do too much. All I can do is fingers crossed that the thing that my mother loves the most, which is going out and feeding the birds in the morning and going out and seeing the flowers that I've tried to maintain, which is something that my dad would have done all those years ago, is still a pretty thing for her to go into. And of course, it's soul destroyed to see the grass browning up, the flowers looking dead, burnt to a crisp, and I can't water them. But what can you say about that? So there are no big box games really this time because, as I said, I'm doing this quite late. Just things that I've bought this week. So we're now up to Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. So that's a steel book. That's the 3rd one. There is only one more to go. Possibly what people consider to be the worst one, the Crystal Skull. So that'll be about a month or so away. One I'm very excited about, Get Carter in 4K. It's another steel book with some extras. But the thing that I liked about this was all the special features. One of those special features is the score is isolated on the audio channel, and I think it's a different recording than what I've got as an album. I've got quite high equipment in regards to playing back a spectral recording, but having it come off of a 4K disc in possibly Dolby Atmos with just that audio might be quite good, and there'll be different cues as well. And then the last one is Event Horizon. Got a soft spot for Event Horizon. It definitely made me jump when I saw it in the pictures. It made me jump when I bought it on Laserdisc. It's just one of those films that's not graphically gory, and it's not also terribly scary. It just has parts that make you jump. It has some nice camera angles from what I remember, spinny angles, scenes from above, scenes from below, zoom shots, and and so forth. And I believe it was quite well coloured. So the HDR gradient was quite good. I think it used some of the basic colours like greens and blues and reds, especially when you're going through things like the computer ventilating system. I think that was all green. It's been a number of years since I watched it, so I'm looking forward to playing that again. So we've reached the end of this blog. I have to get up early in the morning to try and do something with my photography. As I said, I'm thinking of going to a mirrorless camera, which would mean a whole new way of photography to me, because autofocus doesn't work in the same way. But I'm going to see what my old camera can do with the lenses that I've got. And I've got 5 lenses. One of them is a prime lens. That's the nifty 50mm prime lens. But I'm going to see what I can do with my filters, alter my shutter speeds, overexpose, etc., etc., to try and get a nice sunset with all this nice hot weather that we've had. I'm hoping that the clouds go away, and then I'm going to try and get some sleep, and then try, after the main Meister has done his stream, to photograph the moon if I can. I'm trying to do something different in the times that I've got left before possibly going back to work, whatever happens with that situation. But I hope I haven't bored you. It's now literally just gone 1 o'clock. So I'm going to try and get a couple of hours sleep. I hope I haven't bored you. I hope I've entertained you. And I was going to say on that bombshell, and I did that last week. There's no sting. I hope I see you next week, and I hope to God you have a great week. You're all my friends. I want you to enjoy life. So until then, bye-bye.